Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone had an amazing weekend. Nevertheless, this morning I would like to go over the Social Studies Final Assessment Review with you. I want to start out by talking about the ancient civilizations of the Middle East. What type of influence did the development of irrigation have on the growth of civilizations? It gave them more territory to farm and protected them from the destructive seasonal climate. How are the Babylonian laws similar to the laws of the Hebrew civilization? They both involve marriage. Why was trade important in Babylonia? Trade became integral to the economy and the culture. For instance, a vibrant trading system developed, bringing manufactured goods and raw materials from as far as Turkey and even India, which was 1,500 miles away. Who was King Menes, the legendary first king of Egypt, who is thought to have united Upper and Lower Egypt through conquest and founded both the First Dynasty and the great city of Memphis? Early civilizations' innovations that were significant to their survival. They came up with ways to measure items. They came up with a record-keeping system. They developed calendars. They came up with different forms of writing. And they started doing domestication for the first time. Now let's talk about Asian civilizations. What was the most important effect of the Turkish invasion? Well, it affected the fortunes of India in many ways. The Turks established a strong centralized government, brought Islam and Hinduism together in India, which helped in the growth of the culture, what we call Indo-Muslim culture. This society in India was different from the past. Why are Vedas important? These are the most ancient religious texts which define truth for Hindus. They believe that the texts were received by scholars directly from God and passed on to the next generation by word of mouth. What was the caste system? For thousands of years in India, a person's social class was determined by birth. Caste members lived, ate, married, and worked with their own group. More importantly, a person born into one caste rarely changed caste or mixed with members of other castes. How did geography affect Japan? The Sea of Japan isolated them from foreign invaders. How are Taiwan and Japan similar? Both are the islands. Taiwan has the largest number and density of high mountains in the world, and almost 4/5 of Japan is covered with mountains. Both have plenty of volcanoes, giving the islands a mountainous feel with hot springs throughout the countryside. Both experience earthquakes very frequently. Feudal Japan's social structure. At the top is the emperor, who had very little power. Then it's the shoguns, which were very powerful leaders. They basically controlled the government and had the most power, while the emperor was just a figurehead. Then came the daimyo. They were powerful Japanese landowners to whom the samurai had sworn to serve and protect. The samurai, which is the next group, were soldiers. They were like knights because of their views on honor and their codes of chivalry. Then came the peasants, who were the people who farmed and tended to the land. They were the majority of the Japanese people. Underneath the peasants were the artisans. These were people who could take material and craft it into different objects. Why was the Great Wall of China built? The Great Wall of China was built as a military defensive line to defend the invasions from northern nomadic nations. Apart from the function of defense, the wall also boosted the economy as well as promoted the cultural exchange of different nations as at its two sides. How did Confucius transform the society? Government leaders became concerned with the conditions of China's citizens. Now let's talk about African and Islamic kings and empires. Why did the first Albanian people convert to Islam? Islam was first introduced to Albania in the 15th century after the Ottoman conquest of the area. More importantly, it allowed them to escape higher taxes levied on Christian subjects. It also gave them opportunities for better jobs. How did Islam spread to Egypt? Well, by the end of Islam's first century, Islamic armies had reached far into North Africa and Asia. As a result, many began to embrace Islam in significant numbers. What led to the early rise of Islam? The Muslim community spread through the Middle East and other areas through conquest. Egypt was one of the first to experience this movement. Those conquests were inspired by religion, but it was also motivated by greed and politics. Civilizations of the Americas. What was the most significant result of the Spanish colonization of Central and South America? Well, Spain became rich by stealing the wealth of the American colonies, and the natives' economies fell apart. For example, they lost control of their lands, population decreased due to diseases brought by the Spaniards, and they were terribly mistreated. Why was trade so important to the ancestral Pueblones? Seashells, pirates, ornaments, pottery, masca feathers, stones, jewelry, and so much more traded back and forth. Surprisingly, this system helped spread agricultural advancements, religious customs, and pottery styles as well. It was the lifeline of the Pueblo period. They were also able to prosper because of one precious stone, turquoise. Turquoise was akin to modern-day diamonds. It was often used for more luxurious items. Now let's talk about classical cultures of Greece and Rome. Why did the Roman Empire fall apart? Well, financial crisis, overexpansion, military losses of staying against barbarian forces, high taxes, and the spread of Christianity played a huge part. Why did the lords serve in the 6th century? They were assigned various duties which helped the Vietnamese kings increase their authority. What major problems developed as competition for territory increased in early civilization? It resulted in fighting over areas that had a surplus of valuable resources. How was the government set up in Homer, Greece? The position of king was hereditary. However, he worked with a few advisors. Now, can you define the following types of government? I know we went over early in the year, but I wanted to go over a few of them again. Oligarchy is ruled by a few. Democracy is ruled by the people. Tyranny is cruel, unreasonable government or rule. Republic is a form of government in which a state is ruled by representatives of the citizen body and which has an elected or nominated president rather than a monarch. How did Roman expansion in the Mediterranean affect Rome? Where peasants were unable to sustain their farms, could no longer support their families, and were forced to flee to areas where they worked hard for very little. Why did the Romans believe an emperor should have? Well, what did the Romans believe an emperor should have in order to become great? Well, they felt like he needed support and guidance from the gods. Now let's talk about the Declaration of Independence and the Justinian Code. The Declaration of Independence included three major ideals. People had certain inalienable rights, including life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. All men are created equal. Individuals have a civic duty to defend these rights for themselves and others. So now let's talk about Justinian Code. It included these ideas. It discussed different categories of law, the process of implementing laws, the people who had jurisdiction to enact and enforce laws. It talked about the rights of people, both free and slave, marriage laws, adoption laws, laws of inheritance, and laws against crime. The rise and fall of Carthage. Before Rome became a superpower, it had an equal, if not more powerful, enemy, which was Carthage. Carthage was built on trade, where Rome expanded by conquest. This led to a great rival, which later led to the Punic Wars. The three decisive wars lasted almost a century in total, resulting in the ruin and eventual destruction of Carthage in 146 BC, clearing the way for Rome to continue its expansion. Geography and migration. Greenland and Iceland are island countries in the North Atlantic Ocean. Greenland is more than 20 times bigger than Iceland. Greenland is covered by a flat to gradually sloping ice sheet which covers all but a narrow mountainous rocky coast. Almost 80% of Iceland is uninhabited, and much of its terrain consists of plateau, mountain peaks, and fertile lowland. Tuyas in Iceland are sometimes called table mounts because of their flat tops. What were the effects of the Spanish conquerors? When the Spanish conquered the Americas, they brought in their own religion. Hundreds of Native Americans were enslaved. Some died of diseases acquired from Europeans, and some were forced to convert to Christianity. In addition, churches, monasteries, shrines, and parishes were built. This concludes your final review for social studies. However, I also want you guys to pay attention to the vocabulary words that we have provided this week. Guys, please look at that list. It will help you be very successful on your final assessment. Have an amazing day.